understanding how deep the problem is, and it's as deep as someone's identity. That's about as deep as it gets. So we need to actually build a new way of doing college and then find a place where people can practice that for multiple years.
I can start with that. We can cut it out if you don't like it.
There's a stink bug in here.
No!
The homo wall-lined.
Oh, it's huge, too.
Oh, no.
And when you push it or squish it, they are blue.
Oh. Oh, my God. No, I'm good. I think I'll pass.
Oh, it stinks.
Oh, my God, Matt.
Some of them have blue blood.
Like Vulcans?
Oh, it smells so bad.
Why'd you?
I can't stop.
Well, we have that on video.
Excellent.
We'll start the episode with that. Stink bug. Welcome back to UNHIREABLE. This is episode 2. If you're joining us, my name is Liz Copland, and I wanted to start by sharing a little bit about my gesture journey. I joined this team about 6 months ago, and after having spent, over 11 years doing academic advising for students in arts and sciences, and thinking a lot about career preparation, because most of the students that I met with would come in and say, I want to do this, but how will I ever get a job? And so career was always at the forefront of every advising conversation that I was having with students. And my answers, while I tried to do my best with what I had, were unsatisfying. And it always kind of felt like I wish we were doing a better job of launching people from here. And I would organize alumni panels and bring people back to talk about their own career journeys. But students would often tell me afterwards, like, yeah, but like, I don't think I'm going to do that. Or that seems like so hard to do what they did. Or it felt like I was actually making the problem worse in some ways by giving them these exemplary stories of how people got to where they are. So gesture programming was, the option that I would promote from arts and sciences that felt like it was custom designed for our students. And I guess I'm just wondering sort of about the evolution of this work and what you all have learned from it as someone who's still new to it, and kind of what led us to this podcast, like how we got here today.
Well, the career focus actually was preceded by a focus on intellectual sort of identity, intellectual intentionality, which predates me.
For students.
For students, yeah. So I think, and there's a lot of nomenclature in here as well. There's gesture, which we're kind of talking about now, but C21, which was the standard for Center for the 21st Century for Liberal Learning. And the intellectual intentionality piece was pre-me. So that was early 2010-ish.
Yeah, about 2010 is when we started C21. And the goal then, like Matt said, was to help students be more intentional about their academic work. Like, what do you really want to learn? Why are you here? Have some intrinsic motivation that guides what classes you choose. Don't just think about the major. Think about what you want to learn, who you want to be. And so we did lots of programs over the years that we'll probably talk about in future episodes that really were kind of understanding how people define what college means for them. And with the hope that we could teach them how to take better advantage of college. And at the end of the day, most of those things didn't work. And we'll I think break down some versions of those in the future. But what we did learn was that there was something about school itself that was dominating the way that people thought about college. That the original, our intent that people really focus on what you want to learn and who you want to be was sort of overridden by what do I have to do to get through school. And that was a lesson sort of going on from 2010-ish and for a decade probably. And then along the way, we started to develop some programs in college to career that were really independent at that time. At that time, we thought they were separate, like make the most of college as a student, and then we'll do some stuff to figure out how do you transition, or what happens after you graduate. And those weren't really connected. And I think we ended up running into the same problems in that side of the work. At the time, we didn't realize it, but ultimately figuring out that school is at the root of both of those problems. School is at the root of the problems with preparing for early career, and ironically, school was the problem with learning. And it's a pretty depressing episode, but it'll get better by the end. School is wrong in all areas, and by school, we really came to. I don't mean everything about college, but what we call the school mindset. So the way that you mentally approach the work that you're doing, and if it is just checking off boxes and doing what's on the assignment and waiting for people to tell you what to do and when to do it and show you exactly how to do it, that is the most efficient way to get through school, but it not only fails to prepare you for early career, but also is not the same thing as intrinsic learning or intellectual intention. So at that time, we felt like, okay, we can find a way to help people get over those things within the current system. And I think that is what we have come to the recognition, both in the early career and in the intellectual intention. That's really hard in the current system. And it's not so much that there's something wrong with it. Well, there is something wrong with it. It's not that we can just fix the system, but that what we're failing is not teaching them the wrong stuff or failing to give them skills, but failing to help students change their identity. And that realization, took a decade or so, but guides what we do now. That college should be a time to change your answer to the question, who am I, from I am a student to I am a professional, I am someone who can create value for other people in the world, solve other people's problems. So on the career side, I think the first inkling, and I'll let Matt talk about some of the other college career programming, but we had a conversation way back 2013, maybe, 10 years ago-ish. We were talking before about where Maile and Kiera were 10 years ago. Not quite at UW yet, but...
Wait, what were you doing 10 years ago? This is a good thing to think about.
I was in 7th grade and discovering One Direction.
Okay.
Yeah, 7th grade, I think. I switched schools in 7th grade, so 7th, 8th grade was not a fun time. But
that happened to me. I mean, not at that time. That time I was in Gesture, or NC21. Gesture didn't exist yet. But I was also having a hard time and learning about One Direction. I didn't learn about One Direction until a few years ago, so I was behind on that. But in 10 years ago, we called a bunch of employers together to a panel, and that was not connected to the questions we're asking now, so it was almost accidental. But it was a panel with recruiting professionals, high-level people actually, not recruiters, but people involved in higher up in HR from Nordstrom and former Amazon people, people at venture capital firms. I think there was somebody from City of Seattle. And so a wide range of employers, and we asked them, what are you looking for in our students, in liberal arts students, or arts and sciences students in particular. So it was really about the value of a liberal arts education. And we talked for a while, and I was struck by the fact that, well, first of all, they didn't really have an answer. What are you looking for? And they said the same thing, critical thinking, communication, and all the same stuff we say. And so I said, well, what do you mean by that? And they really struggled to answer that, and ultimately decided to answer that question not using any of the jargon that we use, because clearly that had no value to them, and began to mention, because we prompted, what, in particular, not just what are you looking for, but what are we not doing? Because presumably, if you're looking for stuff we're already doing, you're already finding it. We kind of talked around a number of things, initiative and work ethic, and finally, one of the most senior people said, what I'm looking for is people who are smart. And I was like, okay, great, well, lots of smart. All of our students are smart. It's like, clearly that's not what you meant. So what do you mean by smart? I mean people who have a bias for action, who can take initiative and do what needs to be done without me telling them exactly what they need to do, who can handle ambiguity, right? And who don't need me to tell them exactly how to solve the problem, much less what the problem is, because then, what do I need you for if I'm basically doing all the
Solve
work?
it myself.
I'll solve myself, exactly. And that that they have the judgment to understand what the problem is, how it needs to be solved, and in particular, like we said, the initiative to do it. And what was clear in her, she was nice about it, but what was clear was that she is not finding those characteristics in our students. That was absolutely clear. She did not say, hey, you have students who do all these things. She said, you need to
This is
find
what they
students
need to
who do
work
these
on.
things.
Yeah.
And I was like, so after we kind of talked through some of those features, I was like, that's great. So what do you think we should do to teach that better? Like, how can we better prepare them? How would you teach them bias for action? And her answer, and I think this was the other thing that was really interesting to me about that meeting, her answer was that I just think you should admit more. At first, I didn't know if she knew what that meant to us, because, we don't admit students directly into arts and sciences. But what I realized she meant, after we talked about it a little bit more, was, first of all, in some ways, this is the most damning thing of our system that I've heard in a long time. Number one, you can't teach that. People are born with it, or they get it from their family, or whatever. It doesn't come from college. That was her implication. The things I am looking for in early career do not come from college. Okay, bad news, check one. Now, I don't agree, and I don't think she necessarily meant that people are born with it. We certainly do not believe that people can't learn that. But could it come from things outside school? For sure. Work, volunteer, internship, family, whatever. That's plausible. But number one, we're not teaching it. And number two, there's nothing you can do to teach it. It's not just that you're not teaching it now. She didn't say make a class on this or teach it, make an action bias class or give an action bias major. No, which some people say things like that, just have a class on it. But I think she was way ahead in thinking that whatever it is about college, I do not trust you to develop. I do not believe you have the capability as a university of developing the people I need. I just need you to go find them out there and in high school, essentially, and then admit them to UW, and then I'll take them 4 years later. And so that, I don't think in the context of that discussion, she wasn't trying to be critical, but it took me a while to realize how damning an indictment that was and as we tried to figure out how to operationalize what she's talking about, we debrief afterward and, well, how about an action bias class? Okay, that we rule that kind of thing out. And then so we started to ask ourselves, well, actually, how do people? Because it was clear to everyone on our team that it's not something people were born with. I should say it's clear. It seemed obvious to, maybe they are, but we still believe you can learn that, and people do. So that's the evidence. But how? And so we really have spent 10 years trying to figure out how it is that someone goes from being not smart in her view to smart. What does that look like? How does that happen to them? How do we accelerate that? How do we augment that? How do we put people in a context to learn that? Whatever that means. And so 10 years really to unpack what she meant and then to try and build a method to do that. So 10 years to get to the podcast in a lot of ways. But I think we wouldn't launch the podcast, in a sense, we wouldn't launch it if we didn't feel like we'd started to figure that out. So I think we actually have a better understanding now of what it was she was diagnosing and what treatment we would want to use in order to adjust that. But that wasn't the only time we heard that. We heard that repeatedly over interactions with employers. So we heard that in multiple places, right? Multiple programs. I think some of the early C2C programs are good.
Yeah. C2C, that was the College to Career Initiatives. And Liz, that's what you helped us promote to students across the college, all of our divisions. So we had multiple iterations of that. And I think that was a space where we were trying to get them to take on the information we have and then start putting it to practice. So that was much more externally facing. That was things like mentor programs with the UW Alumni Association. That's where our externship with C21 at Amazon, C21 at Microsoft came out of. And again, to Kevin's point about the feedback from employers, so early on, we heard it in the Alumni Association program. someone flat out said, like, I would never want to work with a student like that again.
Wow.
And that was an alum, right? So also we're taking these people from a really, really generous spot. And when we've totally run out through all of their generosity, we've got an issue, right? They won't come back to us. The mentors through the externship program, and again, I feel like we could do multiple episodes of everything we've heard from the mentors there. But I think one of the ones that, to Kevin's point about what student practice was, it was a mentor who's done the program for a number of years. I won't say whether they're at Amazon or Microsoft. We'll leave it anonymous that way. But they said, the students I had this year, they were a group of really, really nice students. I liked getting to know them. There is no way that any single one of those students would get through the first round of an interview at my organization.
Wow. And how long was the mentorship?
They had been meeting with that person for over 5 weeks.
Wow.
For at least 60 to 90 minutes each week. And that was a group of, I think, 5 student mentees. And that mentor said not a single one of them would get through this first stage of an interview process.
If that was just one incident, then we could write it off as an unlucky batch of 5 students. But
it's not one incident.
Sadly, no. Sadly, no. Pretty consistent. And I think to your point, the mentors have always been extremely generous. So
Yes.
they're being too nice, honestly, and we have to dig in a little bit to find out what concerns or critiques they have. And in that case, interviewing is only part of the problem, right? Like, how are people presenting and telling their story at the beginning to get a job? And then we hear from other employers about and nationally as well, about their experiences with early career employees once they have a job and similar kinds of things. So it was clear to us that there's something deeper going on and much more problematic. And so we spent part of that 10 years trying to tell students this. Here's what we found. Here's what we're hearing. Let's try to work on this. Let's try to get better. And you know, we made a little bit of traction, but what we realized is that just telling them didn't fix the problem. They needed to practice. They needed to get a job at the fire department, for example, because that's secure.
I don't know if this is an appropriate time to talk about this, but that the idea of that school mindset and recognizing that in students who are like, I got good grades, I did an internship, how come I'm not getting a job? And that came up a lot with students that I was meeting with, but just entering into this work, it's also made me think about that idea of having the school mindset and trying to solve the immediate problem in front of you and make students feel better. And stepping into this work has really made me rethink how I have done my jobs as a professional. And I don't think I was always doing the best advising work that I could have been doing because I was trying to like fix the immediate problem instead of thinking about how to challenge students to think about how to take action themselves. And that it's hard to like adjust what you're doing if you've been doing school for 18 years and you get to college and you keep doing the same thing. It's hard to make a shift in how you approach problems or how you approach work. So I don't know if we want to start digging into that, but I think that's like a hard thing to wrap your brain around. Like, what does it mean to do school without the school mindset?
Well, I think, so first off, I think it is a good time to lay out some of the terms. So school mindset is, what we discovered over time that people were just sort of doing school, and they were doing it in the intellectual space, and they were doing it in the early career space, right? And we realized, okay, there's more going on than just they don't know how to do it right, right? That there is actually, they do have a way they're doing it. They're doing it in a consistent, rational set of skills and a way of kind of engaging the world, and that's where we came up with that term, school mindset. So school mindset represents the orientation and the definition of this activity that so students using school mindset are engaging in some behavior just in a school-like way. As you said, just what is the what is the minimum I need to do to get the assignment done? How can I check off the boxes? How can you give me the most clear and explicit direction on exactly, the thing I need to do and nothing more? Is this going to be on the test? If not, I'm not going to learn it. Why would I? If it's not going to be on the test, not going to work, give me a grade. Again, that's a normal way of doing school. It isn't the way to intellectually challenge yourself, but it's a way to get through school. It is definitely not the way to do work. So one of the things we realized as and one of the drivers for the content behind the boot camp that we developed eventually was to help people understand what is that mindset shift that has to happen that you mentioned from a school mindset to what we call the mission mindset, which is a change from doing the work just to get the work of school done to figuring out how to solve other people's problems and to create value for other people. And that is the shift from school to work. That is the shift from people who are paid to make puzzles for you to solve, teachers being paid to do that, to you being the person paid to solve a problem for someone else. So for the people at that employment panel, when she was talking about smart people, she's talking about somebody who, I'm the employer and I'm paying you to solve a problem. I need you to figure out how to solve it. And in school, the person who defines the problem and creates it in a solvable way is the teacher. And so I actually have kind of shifted to talking about school puzzles really more than problems, because the puzzle has a solution. It has a path. I've taught you how to do it. Like I built the whole syllabus so you can learn how to solve this puzzle. And that doesn't mean it's not worth learning to solve, but that's not how real puzzles are. Well, that is how real puzzles are, actually. They're solvable.
How real problems are.
Totally. Like if you get a puzzle without it, what if you just had like a box of puzzle pieces that didn't form an actual puzzle? That would be pretty annoying. But real problems might be that way. Totally. Real problems might not have a solution. It might be a difficult solution. Maybe nobody knows the answer. But that doesn't mean you can just shrug it off and not deal with it. So that shift in mindset, I think the other lesson, and this kind of connects back to the intellectual work, how do those parts come together of intellectual intention and early career? It is about our belief now that we need to actually help people change their identity. And that's bigger than just skills. It's bigger than, how to do a resume or how to tell a story in a job interview. It's about really changing who you are from someone who has been paying tuition to people to create problems for you, solvable problems that are puzzles, to an identity where you are the person who is now going to go out and find and solve other people's problems. So, Matt mentioned earlier that we tried to just tell people this and it didn't work. And in retrospect, we can see that didn't work because that's not how you change identities. That's not how anyone has ever changed their identity. They change their identity by joining a community of people who are doing something and then doing it regularly over and over until you become an insider in that work, which is what happens when you get a job. You become a professional in a community and you will learn it. It would be better to start learning it before you graduate. That's our claim. But if you don't, then you can waste a few years in your first job learning it. So we've heard from other employers, I think we might have mentioned this in the first episode, that some employers have said, I don't want to hire people in their first job. And that's what they're talking about. They'll hire them in their second or third once they sort that out. It would be better not to be the person that nobody wants to hire in their first job. Maybe you could be the person everyone wants to hire in their first job. That'd be good. Because then they're going to promote you into your second and third job while everyone else is still waiting to get their first job. So, but I think you get at something that is really important, which is that we kind of have to shift our own identity a little bit in order to work with students differently. And that has been a challenge for the gesture team itself, because we really did start in, let's just teach students. I mean, that's what I was trained to do, teach to. I mean, I taught really boring stuff, theory. I mean, it was interesting to me, but what's more interesting than a class full of dead German white guys? That's pretty damn interesting. So that's all we kind of knew, and we felt like we heard things from employers, and we knew we had the right content, but teaching, didn't work. Not that teaching didn't work. Teaching it as more school stuff is not the way to change a school practice. right? You don't switch out of the student identity by taking a class, because
It's just more of the
that's
same.
the school identity. That is the student identity. So, so building gesture was partly about the content and our programs, but we actually had to create a physical space that was not school. And everything about our work, we try to make not school in that way. And that's actually hard. We even to this day, we run into things that we realize we're doing in kind of a schoolish way, you know, and because we do work at a university, and we're proud of that. We don't want to be unhireable in our own jobs, but understanding how deep the problem is, and it's as deep as someone's identity. That's about as deep as it gets. So we need to actually build a new way of doing college, and then find a place where people can practice that for multiple years. That's what we're doing. It's pretty easy. How hard can it be?
Could be really hard. We'll find out.
Turns out,
Well, no, I think all of this is relevant. Everything that you've brought up, student mindset, that school, the way it lives right now, is a problem. School is the problem. And we're going to embark on this journey. This podcast feels like a great space to explore that. I think we really have to unpack so many of these terms.
Yeah.
You know, you brought up this term of mindset. We use terms like story, challenge. We're going to get into all of this. And you'll learn more about what it means, because they're all huge components of employability and identity that we'll delve into. But I feel like this is the point where you can say, all right, if you're hearing this now and you're understanding it and it resonates with you, especially as a student who has been struggling with this, there's a path forward, and we're going to take that journey with you on Unhireable
make you hireable.
to make you hireable.
Great.
We'll see you next time.